Hello, and coming up on The Daily with me, Tom Cheshire. Prince Harry claims victory in his battle with the Sun newspaper. He's settled, and his lawyer called it a momentous victory. But does that mean the Duke of Sussex has given up on his mission to hold the paper to account in court? Did he really win?
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Calnett.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts. Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Calnett.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, it was a day of drama at the High Court with the Prince and the Sun. We were expecting a trial with plenty of revelations of skullduggery to come from that. Instead, we got a settlement with the paper's owners, News Group newspapers, making a rare apology for what they called serious intrusion into Prince Harry's private life. Now, a long list of celebrities had previously settled with the Sun, which meant, at the end, it was just Harry and the Labour politician Lord Watson left standing, and the latter paid tribute to the Prince's tenacity.
I once said that the big beasts of the tabloid jungle have no predators. I was wrong. They have Prince Harry. His bravery and astonishing courage have brought accountability to a part of the media world that thought it was untouchable.
With me now is Sky's royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills. Rhiannon, this was going to be, the final stage of a saga that has stretched back decades to Princess Diana, to the excesses of the tabloids in the 90s, phone hacking revelations, the Leveson inquiry after that, then Prince Harry going into court after court, as it looked like different sort of cases we can talk about.
Yeah.
And then this was going to be the finale. You'd have 10 weeks of trial, Prince Harry, the Sun newspaper, former prime ministers giving evidence, and we were just about for that all to happen, and then it didn't happen. We've been robbed. What went on here?
Look, it was extraordinary being in court the last couple of days. Yesterday, we got a real sense of do you know what? These negotiations about potential settlement are really going up to the wire, because the legal teams kind of risk the wrath of the judge by continually saying, we need more time, and suggesting that they were close to a settlement. However, for any journalist like myself who followed Prince Harry for a number of years, and specifically his relationship with the press, I just couldn't see it coming. I could not see him settling, because ultimately what he's always made clear is that this was never just about the financial compensation. He was prepared to financially risk a lot. He wanted an apology and he'd wanted an admission of liability. And then, just after 10:30 this morning, that's what we got in this amazing, huge apology that's come from News Group newspapers.
Yeah, because he's always been on this, what he describes as mission, what his father, King Charles, apparently reportedly described as a suicide mission against the press. Has he won that?
When he released his book Spare, he did sort of media interviews and talked about how taking on the tabloid press was now his life's work. This wasn't just about him. This was about using his platform, his position and his experience to try and fight the corner of all of those who had to settle. 1,300 people have settled with News Group newspapers since 2011. It's cost them a bill of between £1 and £2 billion. It's been huge. For him, he was determined to take this to trial. He really wanted News Group newspapers in open court for the first time to hold their hands up and say, look, illegal activities were going on with our reporters and with a private investigator. I think he will be delighted by this apology. There are a number of different things that they go into in terms of admitting illegal activities that were going on. And also, I think what really stands out in that apology is the fact that it's not just apologising for the articles that they were going to pick apart during this trial, but it's more widely acknowledging the damage that it's done to him, to his private life, to his private relationships, and then acknowledging the potential damage that it did to his mother, the Princess of Wales, who, of course, was such a huge part in forming his view, negative view about the press and what it's done to him and other members of his family.
That all makes so much sense, especially when you talk about that mission, his life's work.
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of how it did change his life, what it was like to grow up in that age with the sun on you. What did it mean for him?
I think in recent years, because we've heard so much from him through things like the Netflix documentaries, that interview with Oprah, his book Spare, you almost can kind of get a bit blasé about the impact that this all had on Prince Harry. I think some people have become a bit sort of like, oh gosh, here he goes again. But it was awful what happened to him when he was younger, when his mother was around. He has openly talked about feeling that they were being pursued by the press. And certainly around the build-up to this trial and when he's talked about the stories that were written about him and not knowing where they were coming from, it's hard for lots of us to understand what it must be like when you live in, yes, a very privileged life, but not knowing who you can trust, not knowing who's potentially leaking information about you. And I think for him, there was then this moment where he thought, well, no, hang on, people maybe aren't leaking information about me. Maybe people are gaining that information in an unlawful way. So at least today, I think he's had some kind of vindication that, activities were going on to unfairly target him and rake over very private parts of his life.
I suppose from the news group newspapers' point of view, NGN, what they've got is sort of their red lines not being crossed too. And they make to unlawful activities, but those were by investigators on behalf of the Sun. And crucially, none of the sort of top brass there are mentioned by name. So will they also be looking at this as a victory and saying, OK, well, we didn't have to have 10 weeks of trial where this is all poured over with names being named in front of the world's media?
I was talking to a media litigation expert who said in some ways she's not surprised that they will have done everything possible to try and avoid this trial. For the next 6 to 10 weeks, you and I would have been talking about the ins and outs of what was going on at The Sun and the News of the World by settling what we're told as substantial damages for Prince Harry and for Tom Watson, and by issuing this apology. In some ways, they maybe have thought, do you know what? We're going to hold our hands up and admit to some things because the story will blow up now. People are talking about it in this moment, but it does avoid that, if you think, the slow drip effect of days and days, weeks and weeks of having to give evidence for the first time in open court about these allegations of unlawful activities. It's been interesting that news group newspapers have felt that they have had to issue kind of clarification, I think, because David Sherborne, the barrister who was representing Prince Harry and Tom Watson, my goodness, he did not hold back outside of court. He started listing what he saw as kind of elements of the cover-up, talking about more than 100 private investigators being employed over 16 years, on 35,000 occasions, he said. He also talked about the deleting of 30 million emails. News group newspapers, of course, saying now that they stress that sort of technology experts and things were going to come and be called who would refute all of that. But it does take me back to what was a really important part for Prince Harry of this. This wasn't just about raking over salacious stories about him, sort of 30 articles. He wanted news group newspapers to admit that there'd been some kind of cover-up going on by senior executives. In their apology, they do seem to acknowledge actions that were taken around 2006 in terms of things like phone hacking, but without admitting any illegality. So I'm not sure that for Prince Harry, that's quite gone as far as he wanted it to go, which is why you now have his barrister standing outside court saying, we now want the police and also Parliament to investigate.
Exactly that. And so they sort of expressed regret over it while not admitting to any illegal. But if, as David Sherman stood up, it was, as you say, pretty forceful, talking about perjury, as he called it, cover-ups, and saying they're going to prepare a dossier, hand that on to the Metropolitan Police. How likely do you think, this isn't actually the final act here? There's more to come.
Well, the Met Police have responded. They have said that there is currently no investigations ongoing, but they wait to see if they hear from other parties. And also, don't forget, this is not just Prince Harry and Tom Watson. 1,300 other people settled out of court with News Group newspapers. What's different with them is they got the financial compensation, but they didn't get the apologies that Prince Harry and Tom Watson wanted. There's a big movement behind wanting News Group newspapers, wanting the tabloid press more widely to be held to account for the way that they treat people, for the tactics that they use. But also in recent years, it's been really interesting. Prince Harry has openly kind of criticised the press now. Of course, this trial was going to focus on the activities of journalists kind of 10, 20 years ago. But he has been suggesting that both him and Meghan still feel unfairly targeted by the press because he's gone out of his way to try and take them through the courts in this way. So for him, yes, he will see this as a victory. I wait to see what exactly he decides to say going forward. The fact that his barrister didn't hold back, I think, shows that they certainly don't feel constrained by the fact they've had this apology. They don't seem to be constrained in what they feel that they can say in terms of how they still feel about what went on within those newspaper titles.
Fleet Street would say it's unrecognisable in terms of practices, and then there's also sort of the before and after of leaving the UK and all that, and complaining about British newspapers. But then Vanity Fair had a very big article on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which I think they responded to, saying these were sort of distressing allegations. So that sort of battle with the press continues.
Well, there is still another potential trial looming. That's against the publisher of the Daily Mail. So we wait to see whether this kind of advances negotiations behind the scenes for the Daily Mail publishers to try and settle that out of court. But I don't see him giving up on talking about how he felt he was treated. And for someone who followed him a great deal over the years before he moved away to America, I still find it slightly peculiar that he very much hammers the UK media, where, as you say, now the likes of Vanity Fair over in the States are taking a pop at them. TMZ, for example, were criticising them when they went to see the LA wildfires. He will continue to be as outspoken as possible, I think, when it comes to defending his family's privacy, because that, I think, is at the root of it. He still blames the media for kind of the extended rift that we've had within the royal family now. But then on the other hand, both him and Meghan kind of want to see themselves as champions of a free press, of free speech. So yeah, it's quite an interesting dynamic when you hear them talking about all those kind of things.
There's a lot to be resolved in
There
that.
is, exactly, yeah.
I mean, in terms of that, you mentioned that family, the rift, and perhaps Prince Harry blaming people for that. And it is noticeable, the difference of approach between, the royal family here, never complain, never explain. And maybe Harry not feeling like he has the support from that. I know that there is this rift, but they're very different approaches to dealing with this.
Look, if we specifically look at the two brothers, if you look at Prince Harry and Prince William, I think Prince Harry has been incredibly vocal. Actually, I think Prince William, certainly over the last 12 months, has probably shown us more that he has not been terribly happy at all times with how the press has handled the treatment of the Princess of Wales's cancer diagnosis. So I think it's been interesting the last 12 months. We've seen a little bit of Prince William's still distrust of the traditional media in a way. But it really is Prince Harry who's decided to kind of taking on the tabloids, reforming the press as something that he describes as his life's work. And today, a significant victory, a monumental victory, as his barrister describes it, uncovering what they would say was criminality at the heart of Fleet Street.
Rhiannon, thank you very much. After the break, we'll be talking about what this means for the newspapers and how social media has probably done more than Harry to turn those big beasts of the tabloid jungle into something a little less intimidating.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Calnett.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Jake Kanter, investigations editor at Deadline and formerly media editor at The Times, which, like The Sun, is owned by News UK. Jake, thanks for joining us. David Sherburn, who is representing Prince Harry and Tom Watson, Lord Watson, he said this was a monumental victory, that it was, a historic admission of guilt, framing it very much as a win. But from the other side, if you look at where the news group is, they're still where they were. They've said there was hacking by News of the World. There was illegal acts, unlawful acts carried out by people working for The Sun, not saying Sun journalists. So would they frame that as a win despite the millions they're paying out?
Well, I mean, look, this was sort of being set up as the final season of phone hacking, the scandal. And it's clearly delivered absolutely high drama today with this last gasp sort of courtroom settlement, as is sometimes the way with these settlements. Both sides are claiming victory to some extent. Prince Harry is saying it's a monumental victory. He sees this as a sort of moral crusade, a battle between good, which is him, who is pursuing truth and justice, and evil, who he sees as the Rupert Murdoch empire. And I think it's clear that they have extracted something from news group newspapers that they've not done previously, and that is an admission of criminal activity, even if not directly among some journalists, but commissioned by The Sun, it appears. That is a redrawing of a red line at news group newspapers. They've never previously admitted to any sort of criminal activity at The Sun. They've tended to focus on the News of the World. And so I think that there is clearly some ground conceded here. But equally, news group newspapers have avoided a laborious and probably embarrassing 10-week trial in which we'd have probably had very drawn-out allegations of criminal wrongdoing and potentially of a cover-up as well. And also some potentially very senior executives have avoided a day in court. That includes Rebecca Brooks, who was the editor of The Sun at the time of the claims that were brought by Prince Harry, and is now CEO of News UK, which is the parent company to The Sun. Also potentially avoiding a court date is Will Lewis, who was a very senior executive at News Corporation at the time of these allegations, and is now the chief executive of the Washington Post in the US. News Corp outriders, including lots of Piers Morgan, are already saying that Prince Harry has folded, he's a coward, and has taken the money and run.
I mean, that's quite the way to put it. When we're thinking back to what the tabloids were, in their peak in the 90s, people talking about like their predators stalking the land, untouchable. It sort of feels like a different age, and there's been this, evolution since then, if that's the way of putting it. Why has it changed, and what's their position then compared to now?
The media landscape in general has fragmented beyond recognition in the last, 10 to 15 years, I would say, and in that time, we've had the rise of social media, and the prism through which we see the world is almost entirely governed by social media these days. And the newspapers like The Sun and other tabloids just don't wield the power that they once had. In the 1990s, which is when Prince Harry's allegations date back to, they were at the peak of their powers. They had the power to both look into the lives of the rich and the famous and cover them in extraordinary detail and set the agenda with their stories. And we just don't see newspapers wielding that sort of influence these days. And we probably don't see the kind of tactics that we once saw. What is being alleged here is unlawful activity, including, the use of blagging and private investigators and phone hacking to extract information about Prince Harry and his loved ones.
Speaking of those unlawful practices, David Sherburn in his statement said many of those behind these unlawful practices remain firmly entrenched, both in News UK and across the world. I mean, you said this is the final season, but is there a chance for a spin-off here that this keeps going in the future?
Yeah. Tom Watson said that he's handed a dossier to the Metropolitan Police, and I'm sure that the calls on the authorities, including the government and probably select committees, will only grow for further investigation into some of what has been admitted today. So we may well see further fallout from this.
What does the outcome of today's case do for the reputation of the British press at large? We're always regarded, especially in the tabloid sector, as pretty feral in comparison to other countries. Does that sort of reinforce that sense, or is this maybe an opportunity for a bit of closure and, turning the corner on it?
This does very little for the reputation of the British tabloid press, and it probably reflects quite poorly on the wider UK media ecology. When you've got a major news organisation admitting to unlawful behaviour on top of previous claims of phone hacking, then that is going to reflect poorly on that organisation, and I think, as I say, the wider press.
Jake, thank you very much, and thank you all for listening. Neil Patterson is back tomorrow.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnett.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.